Hello, and thanks for joining us on CN Live. I'm CN, otherwise known as Colion Noir. I recently appeared on Dana Lash's new show, The DL. I always thought that name was funny. To talk about racism and gun control. Let's take a look.
What better way to maintain dominance over an ethnic group than to ensure they're disarmed?
It wasn't that they said the Second Amendment doesn't apply to these people. It was they're not considered people. Because if they're considered people, they would have the right to own firearms.
Even though the slaves were freed by the 13th Amendment, some states still prohibited black people from being armed.
And so you get a whole spate of state-level laws, either explicitly barring African Americans from enjoying their civil rights, or doing so cleverly. For example, by restricting what guns are available, maybe to those who served in the Confederate Army. Well, we all know who served in the Confederate Army and who didn't. You do the math.
It was designed as a tool, in the words that they used, to prevent any reprisals against former slave owners.
Our first guest posted a response to that show on redstate.com. Please welcome writer Kira Davis. How's it going?
Thank you. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to thank you for sharing the video. When I first saw the kind of completed piece, it definitely blew me away. I remember doing the interview, but completely forgot about it. It's kind of how things happen in production. You completely forget what you do. And then when I saw it in its final form, I was like, wow, that's powerful. So besides tooting my own horn about it, what made you want to post the video?
Well, gun control is an issue that I've had an interest in as a writer for quite a while. Mm-hmm. I used to be very anti-gun, and I'm very kind of liberal in my views about everything, but especially the Constitution. And my husband and I lived in the inner city, and we had 2 small children, and he had to leave us for several months for a job. And I realized that I didn't have any way to protect our kids and myself against what was going on in the area we lived in. And so I told him, I think I need a gun, but I'm scared to have one. So he said, if you want to do that, that's fine. We'll sign you up for lessons, and you can learn how to use one safely. And I remember the first day telling the instructor, who was really like a typical Indiana redneck permed mullet. It was permed, but it was also mullet. It was crazy. It was like she had cowboy boots on and her jeans were tucked into her cowboy boots. Like she was straight up redneck. Her name was Sue, and she was like, Kira. She thought, Kira, you have a responsibility to your family to keep them safe, even if it doesn't line up with what you think is the purpose of guns. So she taught me how to shoot, and that first time at the range, I felt so powerful, so empowered, I should say. Yeah,
don't run from that word. I hate. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And the reason I say that is because I see a lot of people catching themselves when they say that. It's kind of we almost want to soften the idea of empowerment and say empower instead of powerful. And I think there's been this notion that's been creative where it's taboo to consider yourself powerful because it's automatically assumed that you can't control that power or you're going to do something evil with that power. People do awesome, great things every day with power. So I don't want people to run away from that immediately. Of course, when that power is being used irresponsibly to do insidious and malicious things, and of course we need to shut it down. But yeah, I just want to point that out. Sorry.
Well, no, I think you make a great point, and especially as a woman, I do think that word gets twisted for us. I mean, we talk about power in terms of sexuality these days, but we also are supposed to be anti-gun as women and thinking women and intellectual women. And one actually saps power from you. You're actually giving power to somebody else, through your sexuality. Yeah. And the other actually gives you power. So that's a great point. I think I'm going to write a blog about that.
There you go. See? Content is king, right?
But yeah, that's why I really changed. And so it really, and then I started reading about the Second Amendment. I've always been a curious person. I'm Canadian by birth. Okay. So I don't have an American education. So there's a lot I don't know. And what I read did not line up at all about what I had originally thought about the Second Amendment, what I thought it was for, why I thought it was written. And so that's how my views changed. So to see this, to have been a Black mother raising Black kids in a Black community, and seeing, you know, the realities of life in communities that aren't as insulated as some others in America. A video like the one you were in that Dana aired on her show speaks to me, because it tells me that what I know instinctually, that this is an issue of keeping something out of my hands that can level the playing field for me as a woman and me as a Black person in America legally, not just level the playing field against those who would do me harm, but also against a government that has had less than pure intentions towards Black Americans in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I remember I did a video years ago, and the video title was how are Black leaders anti-gun? And the biggest point of that video for me was kind of like, why would I take my own safety and place it in the hands of a government who at one point did all of these atrocious things to me, or allowed them to happen to me unfettered? That doesn't make any sense to me. So now we're living at a point in society where I'm not being denied the right to protect myself with the most effective tool to do it. Why would I shun that and push that away? Or why would I have it and then give that power back when there were tons of people who fought for the right to have that power? I know a lot of people like to think, with respect to the civil rights movement, that that it was only based on the idea of equality from the stance of being able to go into certain restaurants and things of that nature. But it also had a lot to do, and maybe underlyingly so, the whole idea of being able to protect myself as a human being. And, I stated it in that video, they didn't even consider you a human being. So therefore they can deny you the rights that were typically accustomed to being placed with people who were people. And so I absolutely agree with that wholeheartedly. You mentioned something about, you kind of grew up having more of a liberal mindset. And then that thing's kind of changed after your husband kind of went away. I know for me, a lot of my liberal, I don't like to talk about liberal mindset in an overtly negative tone, just because there are elements to it that I could see myself agreeing with and do agree with. But while at the same time, I do know that a lot of that thought process was incubated in, for me, school when I was in undergrad, which is its own little microcosm. And the problem is, the moment you leave that microcosm, the same thing with law school. Like, we learned a lot about things in law school. We learned about a lot of law. And not necessarily the case how it's not exactly how it goes down in reality, though. The way you would apply the law in law school is not the same way you apply it when you get into the real world. And I think a lot of people have that kind of eye-opening experience when they come into the real world and realize, okay, this extreme version of being a liberal is not really to your best interest. When the reality starts to kick in, and like you said, go ahead. Sorry.
Absolutely right. Exactly. No, was my experience too. I had an idea. I had ideas and thoughts and opinions, and I find a lot of my friends who are afraid of weapons and afraid of the Second Amendment hold those opinions. They've actually never been in a situation where they're threatened or where their family might be threatened, and haven't really thought about it very deeply beyond the fact that people get hurt with guns. Yeah. So, who could be against, now making sure people don't get hurt with guns?
Yeah. No one's against that. Like, it's not because I own 1,900,000 guns doesn't mean I'm against the idea of not hurting people with guns.
I'm going to party at your house.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. And so I ask this question because it's a very unique question in a way that, in my experience, the vast majority of the Black women that I've encountered aren't really into firearms. I have my perception as to why that is, but you have a more unique perspective. You have something that's more relatable. You are a Black woman. So from your experience, is there any particular reason why that is the case? Is it unique to Black women, or is it something that holistically, as a whole, Black people tend to have this mentality towards?
I've actually always been surprised at the number of Black people I know that are pro-gun. Gotcha. Because typically in the Black community, we vote in one block, we vote as Democrats and we vote as liberals. And so gun rights aren't really a cornerstone of the Democrat platform. So I've always been surprised at how many Black people I know are very adamant about defending their Second Amendment rights. I think it might be more of a woman thing than just a black woman thing.
Gotcha.
I actually hadn't noticed that before, but I guess, yeah, most of the black women in my family don't shoot. But yeah, I think it's women. As women, we are nurturers by nature, biologically. You know, it is not within our nature to pick up a weapon. Although if someone does get in between us and our,
it's a situation you get forced into.
that's kind of what I wish women would see about this issue. So is that it is empowering, to go back to that word I tried to use before, but it is this idea of that, you know, when I was faced with the idea of someone coming between me and my children, that is when I decided I was going to use every tool at my disposal to stop that. So I think it's counterintuitive on one hand for women to pick up a weapon that is designed to repel violence with violence. It feels counterintuitive, but I will tell you, ladies, that it is the opposite. I mean, that first time you fire, it is just like,
I love it. No, you're absolutely right. That sense of empowerment. I mean, I think for a lot of people, we subconsciously walk through life just assuming the suit of victimhood. Like, we just assume if something happens, that's so be it. I'm just going to be a victim of that. I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm just going to go through life understanding if it happens, it happened. Things changed for me instantly once I realized the power of a firearm and being able to carry a firearm and use a firearm. So now, no longer did I look at myself as a potential victim. I looked at myself as somebody who, there's a comfort that comes with the idea that's like, I may not win, but I can actually fight back. Fight back on a level that, you know, may make somebody second guess whether or not they want to continue fighting me, in that sense. So I think the empowerment component of it, I think it's been vilified over and over for years now. But I think, as you pointed out, especially when it comes to women, I think it's something that should be embraced, especially when it's done responsibly.
You know what really bothers me is that I am a political writer for a living, and so I'm always reporting on what's going on with left versus right stuff. And one thing that has bothered me as somebody who I would have considered myself a leftist and a liberal, I now am for sure a conservative. That was a journey. And not to put those labels on you, but that's just how I feel.
For ease of communication.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I report a lot on feminist issues. I was at the Women's March in San Francisco, and a lot of women are in that movement want to tell you on the one hand that all men are predators and that it's their fault and you have no culpability or responsibility in your victimhood, you know, that you are simply at the mercy of these horrible men. And the line that they like to say is, just tell your sons not to rape. Like, instead of teaching women to be empowered, a lot of feminists will say, well, you need to tell your sons not to rape, but clearly that isn't working. So I would say, like, yeah, I definitely tell my son that, and I'm pretty sure he gets it. but there, unfortunately, not every man in the world is like him. And not every man in the world is raised like him. And so what I tell my daughter is to be empowered, to stand up for herself. And listen, a lot rapists are cowards. And a lot of them, you'll hear story after story about how they will back off when a woman screams or fights back. They want an easy mark, you know, and all I'm saying for you ladies is don't be the easy mark. I mean, what can be more powerful than that? I'm sorry, but when you're walking down the street late at night and you feel threatened by a scary man who might do weird things to you, you saying, don't rape me is not going
to do much of anything in that sense.
No, but when you have a weapon in your hand, you have leveled the playing field. And if you want to talk about equality and women's rights and women's equality, well, nothing equalizes us like a gun in our hand when we need one the most.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it was absolutely a pleasure speaking with you today. I hope you continue to join us here on the show.
I'd love to come back. I'm a big fan. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.
All the time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, you definitely have a good one, Kira.
All right. You too.
Coming up next, we're going to find out about a California gun case that could impact the whole country. We'll be back.